feature-length documentary film called The COVID Chronicles has just been released. Filmed between the UK, Ireland, Switzerland and South Africa, the feature looks at how Ivor Cummins rose to prominence as a go-to COVID commentator. As the pandemic brought much of the world to a standstill, deep data analyst Cummins sought to unravel and translate key data into easy-to-follow video bites for the public. Here's a taster of that film.
Would you consider the variants to be geographical?
A mutation always starts at one place. But if in the genome, it's a very susceptible part of the genome, the very same mutation can happen in different countries, more or less at the same time.
I'm joined by the filmmaker behind the COVID Chronicles, Donal O'Neill, as well as health data analyst, biochemical engineer and focus of the film, Ivor Cummins. Thanks both. I'm going to start off with you, Ivor. What instigated this film?
Well, I had gotten involved in analysing the COVID situation in March 2020, especially when the lockdowns began to come in. And I had been talking to Donal at the time, and we'd already made a movie on heart disease prevention. And that got delayed, actually, the launch because of the COVID situation. But as he began to ask me about, well, what does the data say, Ivor? Because I'm the data guy. I began to fill him in on the Diamond Princess cruise ship, which happened in February. And we knew from that the approximate infection fatality rate that could be expected and the heavy leaning towards the aged frail that would sadly be affected. But I gave him estimates, and I put it as Dr. John Lee, the UK pathologist who's been on the media a lot, he calls it within the envelope of a severe flu in terms of impact. And I explained to Donal, look, that's the way it's shaping up. And that kind of largely was what happened. But way back when the lockdowns came in and everything got a bit crazy, you could say, we kind of thought this would be a great thing to chronicle because this is a huge world event. And we're going to be talking through it for the coming year. And let's start recording and capturing what's going on. So ultimately, after a large Kickstarter, we got to actually make this movie.
Donal, I'll come to you now. What sort of thing does the movie cover? I'd say film, actually. I'm just going to be a pedant there, being a proper English patriot. What sort of thing does it cover in the COVID Chronicles?
Well, I mean, the first thing you're looking for in any documentary is a key individual, and Ivor was that individual. I'd worked with him for a number of years, so I knew he was incredibly smart. He's better looking than the average Irishman, so we could put him on camera and get away with it. We didn't have Dr. Asim Malhotra this time until much further into the shoot. So the idea was to really chart Ivor's rise. Now, we thought this would be like a 6-month gig. Neither of us expected, nor did anybody, I would imagine, expect this thing to be still running today. But here we are. So, of course, we went over time, over budget, and everything that typically happens with movies of this nature. But we got it done. And I think what it depicts is that, Ivor, listen, he's a feisty presenter, but the information that he's, torn down and shared, very democratically across YouTube and other channels has been prolific and interesting and, divisive. And there's been lots of commentary on it. So it's just been an interesting journey to follow somebody that I knew from a very different sphere, as in heart disease prevention, and then follow him through what has been a remarkable 18 months for everybody all around the world.
Now, Ivor, I think it's fair to say that you have become a bit of a controversial figure, and most of the broadcasters might be rather trepidatious in having you on. Now, why do you think that is? Why? I mean, you've become a bit of a pin-up, some might say, for anti-vaxxers or COVID conspiracy theorists. Do you understand why you've got that particular tag?
Yeah, pretty much. And I'm a corporate guy. I have 30 years of corporate problem-solving leadership and management of people behind me. So I'm kind of used to the way that data can get kind of spun and slanted and different perspectives and biases. But just on the anti-vax, by the way, I've got all my vaccines. I got a few vaccines going to China in business a couple of years ago. Didn't even ask what they were. Doctor slapped them in. So the anti-vax thing is unfortunate. It's become a weaponized word. And really a COVID vax, a new technology, is not really much to do with the history of proven and successful vaccines. So I'll say that. But my stuff was very unpopular from early on because I was treating COVID in a sense as a severe flu envelope type impact disease. And the world really was perceiving it as something massive, more akin to Spanish flu or plague. And the fact was the Diamond Princess and all the data that emerged showed that it was what I perceived it as. But I think a lot of industries and a lot of foundations and a lot of media hype built up and a lot of political pressures and, a lot of hysteria also. And it all fed itself in a self-reinforcing loop. So the whole world was going in one direction. And Ivor was saying, let's go back to the data. And it wasn't very popular, sadly.
Chaps, I'm afraid we've hit the 5 o'clock hour, so I've got to let you go. But thank you so much for coming on today and talking about the COVID Chronicles, and best of luck with it. Now, you're watching the Afternoon Agenda, and there's lots more still to come.